and we just doubled, maybe tripled the monetary inflation rate in the U.S. and maybe, so stomped down on it for about 2 years. And I think that now we're just going through this massive transition where I think politicians realize that inflating the money supply by 20% a year in the Western world was not sustainable. I think they figured that out, and that's why interest rates are being taken up and we're squeezing back, and that's why you have all these risk assets trading off. And
Hi, I'm Crypto Positive. If you like this video, please leave a comment and subscribe to the channel. It's very important to the channel and gives me motivation to make more videos about crypto for you. And now let's go to the video.
And the like, but what's the conclusion? The conclusion is we've agreed that we're not going to inflate the money supply by 21%, but we're probably going to inflate it by 14% a year. There's no way we're going back to 7% a year inflation. So I think we probably land where we thought we would land, somewhere in the range of double for the next 4 years or something like that, maybe 14% in the US, but other currencies are worse, right? In Japan, they're trying to peg the 10 years to 25 basis points, and that's why their currency is collapsing against the dollar. The story is not, finished here. We'll see how it turns out. But bottom line is everybody for the last 30 years knew that the US dollar was not a store of value over the long term, and they all kind of went to indexes like the S&P index, and we used equities as a store of value, or we used real estate property as a store of value. I think looking at the next 20 years, I think people realize that in an environment where the monetary inflation rate is clocking at 15% a year, equities don't look like such a great store of value anymore because they're valued on cash flows. And so now you gotta think about what is your property store of value, and are you going to use real estate, and if so, where are you going to put that real estate, or are you going to use something like Bitcoin as your store of value? And the collapse, there's that phrase, you can, if you're going to boil a frog, you kind of want to crank up the temperature slowly. It turns out you can boil people at 7% a year if you tell them it's 2% a year, and most people will grit their teeth and they'll fight through it. Only the really sensitive, sophisticated ones will realize that they're being boiled at 7% a year instead of 2% a year. I mean, I didn't realize it, Robert. From 2010 to 2020, it didn't occur to me that the real monetary inflation rate was 7%. I thought, I bought the political line as like 2% or whatever. And I just, blame myself. I said, I just got to work harder. What's wrong with me? And then, but the thing is, when you crank up the inflation rate to 25% or 20% in 12 months, it's a lot more difficult to ignore it. So at that point, a lot more people get sensitized. Not everybody, maybe 1 or 2% were sensitized from 2010 to 2020. And then maybe we got to 5% sensitized or 10% sensitized from 2020 to 2022. And now we're kind of on this education mission to sensitize the rest of the world with the observation that, look, Ayn Rand said 50 years ago, 60 years ago, she said, my mission is to separate the economy from the state, right? And so the ideologues understood it then, right? The Milton Friedmans of the world understood it, right? And there's a Chicago School of Economics that campaigned for it, and von Mises and Friedrich Hayek, right? But they didn't have a technology to solve the problem. So this was a philosophy, and your only method to address this was politics. It was a problem that had to be solved in the political realm. If you could get yourself appointed to be head of the Fed, or if you could become president of the United States, then maybe, or be Paul Volcker, maybe you could take some action which represented sound money and natural thermodynamically sound engineering principles. Maybe you could, but you had to be a politician. it wasn't until Satoshi gave us Bitcoin that you actually had a technology that was viral that you could build into a mobile phone, or you could build into a website that might actually help you attack this or address this issue. So I say Bitcoin is hope. I think we always had the problem. We had the problem 10,000 years ago. We had the problem under the Lydians. We say, oh yeah, they got conquered by a superior people. Well, here's a different interpretation. They became corrupt and they were conquered by as yet uncorrupted people at an earlier stage in their life cycle before that people got corrupted. So you've got the rise and fall of empires over and over and over again. I think von Schliemann found, like, when he found ancient Troy and he dug it up, he found 19 other ancient Troys underneath the one that he dug up. So people have been building and tearing down and building and tearing down and building and tearing down and building and tearing down, right? Thousands and thousands and thousands of years. This is the human condition, right? It makes you think, well, we had to build our houses of clay and it was inevitable that they would get knocked down by a storm and we had to keep rebuilding. How many times do you have to rebuild a house made of wood in the past 10,000 years on the same spot, right? A lot. The problem is not the human aspiration. Humans have always wanted to build a beautiful house on a hill. The problem is you build the house on a hill with wood and it rots, and after 50 or 100 years, it gets knocked down or blown down. You got to do it again, and you got to do it again, you got to do it again. So the lack of a material with integrity that allows you to achieve that ideal has been the human tragedy. After Bitcoin, we now have a material. Now, if you combine the ideology with the material and you build it into a business or build it into a political system, you can build it into a currency, you can build it into a company, you can build it into a product or service, you can build it into a family, you can build it into a security, right? You can build it into something, and you can then take advantage of the superior structure and integrity of Bitcoin in order to achieve something which is how much better? If gold's got a half-life of 35 years and a fiat currency run well has got a half-life of 10 years, and a fiat currency run poorly has got a half-life of 5 years. Well, Bitcoin's got a half-life of forever, right? It's not 100, not 2,000, not 1,000, 10,000, 100,000 years. So what if I told you build a house with wood, it'll last 35 years. And then I said, oh, or by the way, here's this new material that'll last 1,000 years. Build a house with that. The entire society would presumably be a lot richer because you wouldn't have to keep rebuilding the city every 100 years or every 50 years, right? Maintenance cost deteriorates, right? Stuff doesn't break, and then you can redirect the access to human flourishing and progress.
Beautifully said. This whole perspective that you've given the world on money as energy really shows how closely I think we mirror our systems. So we could maybe perhaps modify Lord Acton's phrase to say that corrupt money corrupts absolutely. And, the faster the leakage, the corruption, or the inflation takes hold, the faster the system will fail, right? This is
Ожидание вокзала. Стою и смотрю куда-то в сторону перрона.